What is up, people of the internet? My name is Brian, and today I'm going to show you guys how I set up for a client's podcast. It's a video podcast, and the other half of the podcast is actually recording in a different state. So I'm going to show you how we set that up and navigate that situation, and then I'm going to show you from beginning to end what it looks like, all the things I set up, how I light it, how I run the audio, and then how the whole podcast comes together in the end. So if you're into podcasting or wanting to get into podcasting, this would be a beneficial video for you. Let's go get set up. Okay, just got to the studio, about to start setting up the lighting and all that stuff. And one thing I wanted to touch on real quick is if you have a client that wants you to produce a podcast for them and they want a consistent look across multiple episodes or things like that, if you have the ability to have a reoccurring lighting setup or things like that, you should definitely do that. So one thing that can help you achieve that, and what I like to do is, whenever we set up everything for the first time and get it all dialed in, everything looks great, I'll step back and take just a super wide angle photo with my phone, that way I always have it, of exactly where I place the lights whenever we set it up that time. That way you have that to recall whenever you set up the next time, or you go to film another project or another episode. You can know exactly which lights you used, you can know exactly which modifiers you used, and you can set things up in the exact same or very similar to the same sort of lighting configuration. So whenever we dialed everything in last time, we got it all set in the studio. I had pulled down this white backdrop back here, and I'd taken a couple of my RGB lights and put them to an orangish sort of hue color and pointed them at the backdrop. So it kind of creates an orange glow sort of color cast behind her. And the reason I wanted to do that sort of lighting configuration, have that warm orangish glow behind her, is because the name of her business is Ginger Wellness. That warm, nice, inviting sort of feeling is what she goes for with all the things she does. And that's what I want to achieve through the visuals of what we're doing. I also used one of our plants we have here in the office, and I put that behind her as sort of a background element that's a little out of focus. It just gives some sort of depth to the image so that she's not just sitting there against a plain backdrop. So I'm gonna get you actually setting this stuff up. So I have about 30-ish minutes to get all this set up. And the reason I'm putting the chair here instead of back here that's going to be against the backdrop is so there's a lot more depth in the room. This room is not gigantic. It's not super depthful this way. I don't even know if depthful is a word, but I want to create the most space possible between her and the background. That's what we want to create, because we're not going to be shooting with a super wide angle lens. This lens right now is this far away from my face. This is a 14 millimeter, and it's not super flattering for female facial features and all this. You can see my nose is real big. So I shoot her podcast on a 24-70, and then that gives us a pretty good frame at the back. But I'll show you all that whenever I get it set up. So now I'm going to take these two GVM lights. They're pretty inexpensive. They are RGB, so you can make any color out of them. I basically just use them to splash a little bit of color into things whenever I need a little bit of that ambient color sort of thing. Now, whenever I set these lights up to splash onto the backdrop, I kind of put them totally off to the side so they're not in frame at all in the final product. They're kind of off to the side, about a 45-degree angle, and they just kind of shoot in towards the center of the backdrop. That way it creates like a gradient behind her. So now that I got those lights in the back in their like relative position, now I'm gonna start setting up the key light and the fill light and the hair light if it's needed. To do that, I have a Aputure 120D. I have two Godox VL150s, I believe. And then I have the Aputure Light Dome, an Aputure Light Dome Mini, and a Godox lantern right here. And those are the sort of configurations that I like to use. Normally I'll use the Aputure Light Dome as the actual key light softbox. It makes a really nice fall off on their skin. And then I will use this to like boost the ambient exposure and fill in the shadow side of their face. And then if needed, to separate them from the background a little bit more with the hair light, and I'll boom over a little light that's shining right on the back of her head just to separate her from the background just a little bit. We're almost done. I got all these set up in 15 minutes. So I'm gonna do the last minute adjustments to the lights whenever she gets in here, and so I can see how she's gonna sit and how the light falls on her face. But this is the general positioning right now. I'm gonna get the audio set up. For the audio, I'm using this, which is a Zoom H6 handy recorder. These things are crazy, crazy good for the money. So if you're looking into getting into podcasting and you want something that's super reliable, super good, that has phantom power built in, this is the way to go. I will have a Shure SM7B microphone, which is like the gold standard for podcast microphones. It's like the one you think of when you think of podcast microphones. I will have that running into a cloud lifter, and then the cloud lifter going into the Zoom H6. And on the Zoom H6, that microphone requires phantom power, which is basically where it powers the microphone. You can turn that on internally. I'll have my headphones on right here, and I will be sitting back here monitoring the camera and the audio the whole entire time they do the podcast. That way she can just focus on talking, doing what she does, performing on camera, remembering the information she needs to do, and I handle all of the visual, all of the audio stuff. That way she doesn't have to wear big old can headphones and all of that stuff. So finish up this audio setup real quick and I'll show you the final setup. One of the things I almost forgot to mention was we have this gigantic window right here. There's a lot of ambient light that is totally unwanted right now. I want to control all the light in this room. I have a 6x4, I believe it is. It's a pop-up backdrop is what it is actually. But all I do is I unfold that out and it covers this whole entire window, and I just put it on the opposite side of the window and have the black side facing in towards us so that it rejects all of that light that's spilling in, and the only light in this room is what I actually want to have in this room. Okay, so we have all the lights set up now. We got Jaysha here. She's the actual subject, so I can like see how the light is actually hitting her face. I just have to make like the little minor adjustments of like how shadows fall on her face and just make sure everything's good to go. 15 minutes until we're supposed to start with the other people that are in Florida. The way that we actually do that is they just use their phones and hop on just a regular call, and they have earbuds in. So she has her hair over her ear and you can't even tell that they're actually like on a regular audio call. But that's the easiest way that we've found, because video calls drop out, they can glitch out and do all that. I have my camera on this end, the other dude has his camera on the other end, so that we just mesh those files in post. Just got done filming the podcast. We filmed a little bit of extra informational content for her to use for her business also while we had the whole setup. That way a little bit more cost efficient and all of that stuff. And here's our whole setup. There's the hair light. Here's the key light, fill light there. It's a little bit different whenever you have reflective glasses on, but so with this sort of thing, we went for a high key sort of light, which is where it's not real contrasty. There's not a bunch of light spots and dark spots. For this sort of thing where it's just a podcast, her talking to another person, the information they're talking about is the point of what they're doing. So it doesn't need to be distracting. There doesn't need to be a lot going on, but it does need to look nice. I'm gonna leave you guys with a little bit of the final product, what it looks like on my end and what it looks like all cut together and with the sound involved and all of that stuff. So if you have any questions about anything I've done or shown in this video, leave them in the comments below. I'll be sure to help or make a new video explaining more in depth on what individual things do, or if you have any questions on editing the podcast or how I put these things together on the back end, let me know that too, and I'll make a follow-up video and talk about that process, because that is a very time-intensive process, but there are some ways where you can kind of speed it up a little bit that I've found. Thank you guys for watching this video. I appreciate it. Here's a little clip of the final product. Make sure you like the video if you liked the video. Subscribe if you would like any more photo, video, podcasting, anything creative, business-related content, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
They're begging me to start it because they said, well, I was in there, I was asking these questions, and their response to me was, well, I'm the doctor and I've been to college, so you should just trust me. It's
Not a big fan
that's
of
not
that.
how that goes.
Yeah,
No.
and we talked about that briefly. Like, it's about a conversation. It's always about giving informed decision and letting the patient make their decision, and you coaching them through the risk versus benefit and supporting them and advocating for them for what they want in their lives.
Right.
So